Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In this episode, there's gonna be two stories. The first story is a longer one about how a dad gets revenge on his own son, and it's a really good one. The second story is how a workplace screws themselves over by making employees perform dangerous tasks, because that's always fun. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. This first story is titled, "Don't Want to Do Your Chores, Son? Well, have fun being stuck at home." So this story deserves some context. It's actually ProRevenge that my father did to me. So after I graduated from high school and still hadn't found my calling, my parents told me I could live with them rent-free as long as I did one very important thing. Helped out with the chores, don't bring any girls or friends home after 9 p.m., and occasionally offer to help with the groceries for the week. It had been about 3 months, and for the most part, I was adhering to the second and third rule that I was given. That all changed when I met my first adult lady friend. We'll call her Roxy, cause she was a pretty badass chick. Now Roxy was a super bad influence on me. She started getting me to stay out late and spend most of my paychecks getting us booze and weed and such. I started slipping down a wormhole to which I almost wouldn't have returned from. My dad from time to time would remind me and say, "Hey son, you need to make sure you're helping with the chores, and would you mind throwing $50 towards groceries this week?" Those reminders were ignored after 3 months of being out of school and about a month and a half of me knowing Roxy. We had come home from a concert in another city. For anyone who's my dad's almost old fart age, I was at a concert for Papa Roach, and she told me she was too tired to go home and wanted to crash with me at my parents' home. The time was 2:30 a.m. We pulled up to the driveway and I told her to be quiet. And of course, she wasn't because it was Roxy. As soon as we step inside the house and have just locked the door, she starts screaming the chorus line from Twisted Sisters, "We're not gonna take it," at the top of her lungs. Like clockwork, my parents' light comes on and my dad comes out of his room like a cheetah. A goddamn cheetah, I tell you. He sees both of us and looks back into his room. Turning his head around, he goes, "Take her home. Now." I immediately turn around and take Roxy home. She's pissed and tells me that I should stand up to my old man, yada yada yada, and I should defend my right as an adult. Soon as we get her home, I know I can't go home, so I stay at the apartment with her. The next morning, there's a text on my phone. It said, "Come home at your earliest convenience. Love, Dad." I know I'm dad because A, my dad never texts me, and B, if he does text me, he's more of a John Madden play-by-play kind of guy. What I mean is he's gonna give you a paragraph of words for what could have been a single sentence or two. I kiss Roxy goodbye for what I'm sure is the last time I'll ever see another human being and head home. When I get home, he's sitting at the table with a pen and a piece of paper in front of him. He tells me to sit down and then puts the piece of paper in front of me. The paper is an actual itemized list. He tells me that for the last month and a half, I haven't done any of my chores, and that he's calculated that based on the roughly 4 to 5 hours a weekend of time I wasted for him, that amounts to his pay, which was $25 an hour. So he's taken 4 hours multiplied by 6 weekends, multiplied by $25 per hour pay, and figured that I need to pay him $600 for the time wasted. Then, also for good measure, throw in an extra $100 for the 2 times he's asked me for $50 to help out towards groceries. He gets up and walks over and says there's a dotted line for me to sign, stating I will pay all this back in 1 month's time. I'm adding it all up in my head and tell him that I barely make $1,000 after taxes a month. He says I should have thought about that before I brought a girl home at 2:30 in the morning. He tells me that if I don't sign this paperwork, I have 30 minutes to get my shit and get out. I almost start bawling and tell him that I want to sign the paper, but could he at least give me a month extension? He puts his hand to his chin, thinking, and looks down at me and agrees. He says, "You have 2 months to pay me $600. Oh, and by the way," he purposely hangs this in the air for a good 20 seconds and says, "If you don't pay and continue to break my 3 simple rules, there will be pain in your future." He revises the contract he wrote up, and I sign it. So a month and a half goes by, and I've managed to pay him $450. I haven't seen Roxy as much over the past 2 months for obvious reasons that her cash pit has dried up a bit. She then calls me on day 45 and tells me that she misses me, wishes we would hang out, why I'm working so much overtime, and I told her that I have to pay my dad back or get kicked out. Of course, she ends the call and this happens. She texts me the next day about a show in another city. I hear all the usual, "Oh, it's a band I really like. I've been wanting to see them forever. Plus, I miss snuggling up to you at the concert." I somehow stupidly agree to go with her, and while we were there, my wallet gets stolen out of my pocket. We go home, I drop Roxy off, and a few days go by. My dad comes knocking on my door as it's now officially day 55. He asked me if I want to pay him the last $150 or wait till the 2 months is officially up. I tell him that I got him and that I'll go to the bank right now, seeing as I just got paid the day before. I look around my room for my wallet, which is nowhere to be found. I go find the jeans that I wore at the concert that I was at with Roxy, and no wallet in there either. I start panicking as I can't find my wallet anywhere. I go back to my dad, who's in the backyard cutting grass, and I tell him what's going on. He gives me half a grin and says, "Sorry for your situation, but I'm treating you like a tenant now. Go to the bank, get my money, and when you come back, pay me the $150 and we'll go from there." I haul ass to the bank, and my heart about falls out of my chest as the teller tells me my bank account has a balance of $3.42. My heart drops to the ground. I head back home and tell my dad what happened. He puts his hand on my shoulder and says, "Ah, that sucks. Well, you know how I'm gonna get my $150, right?" I tell him there's no way to have the money to him in 5 days or less, and he says, "Okay, how about I drive you to work, seeing as you don't have a driver's license right now?" He drives me to work, which I'm there for roughly 8 hours. And the revenge. While at work, my dad pulled out his massive collection of craftsman tools and proceeds to drain all the fluids in my car. He gets a buddy to come over and help completely remove my motor, my transmission, and my tires. My dad and his buddy, being a mechanic, managed to do all of this in an 8-hour shift of me being at work. At the end of my 8-hour shift, my dad's in the parking lot waiting for me. He's in coveralls, which I find funny, as he's got grease all over his arms. He drives me home, and I notice my car's pulled into the garage and on jack stands. I look at my dad and ask, Dad, what's up with my car?" He points to the garage and says, "Oh, go ahead and see. I've got my $150 today." I jump out of the car as it goes into park and run to my car. There's a note on the front from my dad's mechanic friend stating that the motor, transmission, and tires have all been sold to him for $150, and that he'll happily not only give me back the items, but help me install them back into my car. But I have to work for him on my 2 days off for the next 4 weeks, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I fall over crying, obviously, and after my dad laughs a bit, he tells me that my first shift starts tomorrow. I spent the next 4 weeks working with my dad's mechanic friend on my days off. After 2 days of working, we'd bring a few pieces of my car back to my house, and he'd teach me how to put those items back together. And slowly but surely, I learned to be my very own do-it-yourself garage mechanic. This may not fit here, and my dad did ProRevenge on me because shortly after I lost my car, Roxy dumped me, and my dad took 6 months out of my life to teach me how to be a somewhat responsible adult. Oh, and the icing on the cake was as soon as we had my car back together and running, my dad walked up to me, gave me an envelope with $450 in it with a note that said, "Stop being a knucklehead." Perfect example of tough love, OP. I love that he gave you back the $450 after all of it. We need more people like OP's dad in this world. There's too many entitled parents out there. This next story is titled, "Try and Force Workers into a Dangerous and Life-Threatening Situation. This will backfire in ways you couldn't imagine." This is a story about how I resigned from my warehouse job once and for all. The company that I used to work for implemented a new way of paying management commissions and bonuses. It was a money saved, money paid type thing. Every little thing had a bonus attached to it. This month you saved on stationery? Here's $100. Didn't spend any money to repair the store in any way? Here's $500. Normally this wouldn't affect us, but there were a few categories that were outright dangerous and unfortunately had the biggest bonuses attached to them. It started with a manager and area manager wanting us to change light panelings in the store. There were a few problems with this. One, the lights were so old that the wiring was faulty and unpredictable. And two, the way the lights were rigged would require you to have training as an electrician to remove the panels and replace the bulbs. Management was hoping that we would undertake the work, saving costs on hiring an electrician and thus receiving a hefty bonus. I outright refused, but a few of my offsiders were roped into it. After one particular incident of a worker receiving a mild shock, we all banded together and said, "No way." A week later, we were emailed a link to a new online training course. The main theme was warehouse employees were to undertake various maintenance tasks, and the main topic, changing lights, light panels, etc. If we didn't complete the training, then we would be unsuitable employees, not meeting requirements, and could possibly be terminated. I set about taking screenshots of everything, including the mandatory test. It became evident very quickly that I was one of the only employees who had refused to complete the training and was confronted by the manager, who said that I had a week to complete the training or I'd be written up with an official warning. And because of the severity of the warning, I could face disciplinary action and possible immediate termination. Now, what management didn't count on was anyone sharing this information with outsiders. I put together a nice packet with all the new tests that would force warehouse employees to do dangerous tasks. But I also added copies of the new management bonus structure where it explicitly had categories that detailed if employees could do in-store repairs and save the company money, they'd receive a hefty bonus. There was even an award for most money saved. I also made sure to include copious amounts of emails and texts showing that management was violating a lot of health and safety guidelines, especially with the lack of warehouse staff to safely unload and load trucks and shipping containers. And one of the worst things I found was around page 36 of our contracts, which stated that we weren't officially allowed to unload transfers and trucks, and that the company would hire professional contractors to unload it, and it was up to us to take over once the goods were safely unloaded. Why? Because the company didn't want to cover us medically if we injured ourselves unloading. I checked in with my best friend who was a lawyer who helped me navigate any non-disclosure issues and who pointed me in the right direction with sending off this information. Once I had everything sent off, everything went back to normal for a while. Management kept pressuring me into signing off on undertaking dangerous tasks to make their bonuses, and I refused. It all came to a head when the area manager essentially said, "If you don't sign off on this next shift, I'll fire you on the spot." No matter how much I pleaded my case, the area manager tried to spin it as a new company wife initiative and that we should take pride in our workplace. I struggled with this a lot and didn't know what to expect when I got off the bus and made my way to the store the next morning. When I walked in ready for my next shift, the store was essentially deserted. I opened the warehouse, checked the transfer sheets, and grabbed my water bottle and headed into the store to fill it up. As I was standing by the water filter, the customer service manager came downstairs with a cheeky smile on his face. Apparently, the manager was under close review and was currently in mediation having to answer for all the bullshit corners she cut to make her bonuses. The best bit is the area manager and general manager were both fired. Apparently, they were given the choice to resign without any payouts or benefits, or the shareholders and the CEO of the company would begin an investigation into the practices. I couldn't believe it. A few hours later, the CEO and the CFO arrived and tried to offer me a bonus for speaking up, and a formal apology and a raise if I were to drop the case. I just grabbed my bag and resigned right there on the spot. No way I was dropping anything. I walked out of there with a sense of satisfaction, knowing they'd be investigated, and from what I saw online and on the company's website, it took a long time for the company to recover. Even to this day, you can see the company has been bought and changed hands over and over. Millions lost, bad publicity, public trust and employee trust gone, all to save a few bucks and reward greedy management. And that's it for this episode of r/ProRevenge. If you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I upload videos almost every day. See you guys in the next one.